Welcome back to another UNC Tar Heels basketball recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I am THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our basketball recruiting analyst, David Sisk. And David, big day for the Tar Heels. They picked up their their second commitment for the class of 2021, D'Marco Dunn, a shooting guard who is now from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Grew up, spent most of his years in Arizona. Mother got a job in Fayetteville in the summer of 2019, and he's been there ever since. I had a great year last year at Westover High School, and kind of exploded on the scene in the spring. Got an offer from Carolina. They kind of shot up to the top of his interest list right away, and here he is. Several months later, D'Marco Dunn is the next future Tar Heel. What are your thoughts?
Well, not a surprise, really. I think by the time that he got the offer from North Carolina, from that time on, North Carolina was really kind of the favorite. There was a lot of talk about Arizona because he was from there. And then Vanderbilt, his high school coach, George Stackhouse, is a cousin to Jerry Stackhouse, former North Carolina Tar Heels, now the head coach at Vanderbilt. But in the end, North Carolina being the state, I think he's really, from when I've talked to him, he's just really been just caught up in it. Just how crazy, basketball crazy the state is, how much, the reputation of the UNC program. So they had a lot of that going for them. And in the end, too, it also didn't help. This is one thing. I think COVID has caused a lot of players to stay more local instead of going back nationally. Now, I know he has family in Arizona, but I think in this case, he just wasn't able to go out and take other visits. So I'm not going to say that's the reason North Carolina got him, but he would have got to see the University of North Carolina campus too, and it would have been hard to top that. But, he didn't get to see some of these others, so he's close to home, close to his mother, so that certainly didn't hurt any.
Getting that Carolina offer for a kid, most kids is different. There's a few schools that are like that, and it certainly validates who you are as a player. And I know that it was around the time where his game was kind of exploding because nobody really knew much about him until April, May. And then he was one of the guys that got to play some during the summer. I know that a lot of the kids didn't really get to play much at all or at all. And he got to play some during the summer. So certainly Roy Williams had film to evaluate kind of where typically Roy wants to see a guy in person and shake his hand. In fact, the story about Christian Keeling, the graduate transfer that played for him this past year from Charleston Southern, Roy at least wanted to meet him. He never saw him play in person. So he was down at a family beach house in the Charleston area, went over and met him one day and shook his hand, and that was pretty much that. I don't really – in this case, he wasn't able to see a local kid play. Roy's having to adapt, doing the video thing, but at least there was some film of D'Marco's game this summer. So he's the number 91 player in the class. He's a shooting guard. He's a kid that's a rather prolific scorer in high school. So what kind of player will North Carolina be getting in D'Marco Dunn?
Well, let me add this first. He turned into one of the hotter players in the country. Before I went to work with you for Tar Heel Illustrated, I was doing some work with BandySports.com over on the Rivals Network, and Vanderbilt was actually the first-time major program to offer him. And I guess I probably did Rivals' first interview with him. And, man, he got hot in a hurry. And he went from one offer to 15, just like snapping your fingers. And I'm talking about high major offers. So he ends up late February, March of his junior year. He has no Power 5 offers. He gets one, and he ends up with over 30 offers by July. Wow. So that tells you how hot he was. He's a different type player a little bit, but his rise puts me in mind of another kid out of Arizona, Saban Lee, who just had 3 great years at Vanderbilt. I loved him. And he was a kid that was not in Rivals Top 150, wasn't in anybody's rankings. And then he shot up And a lot of these kids, when they get in the top 50, they might go to number 145, number 138, somewhere in that range. Saban, got up to right around 100. So he wasn't as high ranked, and he's right outside the draft. He may get drafted. It's going to be tough to tell, but he'll be close. He's going to get paid. I know that, to play somewhere. So D'Marco, people are going to kind of look at the rankings a little bit, and we're not going to talk a whole lot about that, but, he's at 91 now. He dropped a little bit. But, man, you think about it. A couple months ago, he wasn't even in the top 50. So not only did he get into the top 150, he exploded into it. Like you say, a scorer. And I know North Carolina, Roy probably wants a little bit of a guy who's handling the ball too, maybe a combo type. He can definitely score. He can definitely shoot. He loves the Carolina style. He thought it was a fit for it. He can get up and down, and so he's trying to acclimate himself, I think, probably a little bit into both positions. But, Carolina they're going to have a very good backcourt in 2 years. They just needed a little bit more depth. Here's the good thing. He does not have to come right in and be the man. He can kind of adjust and kind of get his feet wet and get into this. And I think he can end up being a very good player. I think Coach Williams, for programs of North Carolina stature, has had more luck with players staying throughout their career, getting into that second, that third, even that fourth year sometimes, and becoming very good college basketball players. And I don't think rankings are as important in North Carolina. I don't think it's just an end all that they get a top 5 player, because I don't know how comfortable they are having a bunch of one and dones.
Well,
so I think if you look at a guy that's, let's say, number 75, and he stays around 3 years, but that third year, a lot of them are gone. He's not top 75. He's probably in the top 20, 25 to the left. And you've got an older, experienced, bigger, stronger, a man who's a good player.
To your point, Garrison Brooks was in the 120 range, and now he's on the cover of magazines going into his senior year. A lot of people were concerned when the rankings came out here recently, and he had dropped to 91. But I also might want to remind people that Kerwin Walton was 93.
Yeah,
and Carolina fans were thrilled to get him. So you got to have these kind of guys, and a lot of them come in and be big time players. When they get into school, there's so many guys that get in and they play way above what their ranking was. There's so many guys, again, they play way below it. I think what's important is, and I've covered Roy Williams every year since he returned to North Carolina. And he's an amazing judge of talent, obviously, and they coach him up when they get him there. Everybody gets a lot better when they get there. So, and this guy has a skill that they need and that you're going to need moving forward. He can do this.
And I've said this before on here. You go back to his run, Coach Williams' run, when they win a national championship, they would have got another one. They get beat by, a 30-footer at the buzzer. You look at those teams, and I'm sitting here looking at the other ones that are getting more hype. Probably they've got all these one and dones. They're not getting as far. And I'm looking at North Carolina and even Villanova, and they've got some of these kids that are staying longer, and especially North Carolina. And I'm like, hey, man, these are the same names the second time around that was around the first time. And I'm like, if I was a college basketball coach and I was at a big-time program and I could get the players I wanted, Roy might have kind of just laid the outline down of how I would want to build my team and my program. And like I said, like a coach told me in the Pac-12 that I know very well, you've got to find a way for your team to get old. And I think this is a guy that they may be able to get old with.
And Carolina fans have a tremendous appreciation for those kids over the years. It was a tough season last year, but so many fans felt very connected to Brandon Robinson because he had been there. He had been through it. He had a championship ring. He waited his time. And, when he was healthy, he played pretty well. So I think this is a good pickup. Dontrez Styles is the other member of the Class 21 so far. So they have 2 kids. They're both in-state kids. So that's another question answered. A lot of fans a couple years ago
were –
Pardon me?
2 top 100 kids.
Absolutely. In-state kids. Some fans a couple of years ago were wondering, well, why don't Roy get a few more in-state kids? Well, he's got 2. Got 2 in this class. So off to a good start. There's still a couple more spots they're going to fill. And I think they're going to do very well with those spots. We don't know for sure who they are, but certainly this class has it may not be as highly rated as the current freshman class was when they were seniors. But what's more important is that they're going to fill some needs.
Exactly. And like I said, too, I think you're setting a program now. There's not going to be any more years like they had last year, I don't think. This team is going to be much improved next year, and you can't look ahead too much, I don't guess, and try to predict who's going to be here and be back. But I think you could kind of lean toward already that this 21-22 roster could be really, really good indeed. Yeah. And so – so I mean, you could have some pieces there that could fit right in and then be on to the future. So I think that's the thing, but that last year was really, I think when you look to the future and what's in play now, that was an outlier.
If you haven't been to Tar Heel Illustrated, go check us out, tarheelillustrated.com. We've got all kinds of stuff all over our site. We cover the basketball and football team wherever they go. We go, COVID protocol permitting, of course. And, of course, we're all over football recruiting and basketball recruiting. He's David Sisk. I'm Andrew Jones. Thanks for stopping by.